Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I'm thrilled, honored, humbled, and grateful to have with me today Todd Wilms. Todd is a Silicon Valley marketing leader who's helped numerous world-class brands get to the top level. Todd is the founder of Founders Place. He's a fractional CMO for numerous companies, a #1 Amazon Hot List author, and keynote speakers with leadership roles at companies like PeopleSoft, PayPal, eBay, SAP, Neustar, and VeriSign under his belt. He's been working with founders, entrepreneurs, and startups to maximize revenue results. He's also part of the Consultants Collective, a group of executive consultants who help organizations innovate, transform, and improve performance. Todd, really excited to talk about your book, to talk about your sales experience. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Wow, that was an amazing, high energy, and tightly compacted introduction, I think without a breath. That was impressive.
Thank you, sir. No, I appreciate it, man. Well, we're really excited to have you on the show. I know, for the book, like you've done so many things from leading social strategy at SAP, a global massive workforce, to corporate communications at Neustar, to the chief storyteller at Consultative Collective, to writing your book Beyond Products, where you've interviewed 70 plus entrepreneurs and game changers. But the audience is dying to know two things. Number one, sales secrets from the top 1%. What is your top sales secret? If you had to go back in time to when you first started in selling, what would that top secret be? But before you share that, audience is also dying to know, like, Todd, who are you, man? What's your how'd you get started in sales and marketing? And I want to go through all the places that you worked and what were the biggest successes, failures, and learning experiences, which we call micro secrets, that you could share with the audience that helped you level up to the next gig and the next gig and the next gig to where you're at today. So without further ado, I'd love to just give you a quick background on where you're from and how you got started and everything.
Perfect. Okay. So look, I won't take people back to the very beginning because while I find that fascinating, I think most people would find that ridiculously boring. But one of the things that I think was the hallmark of who I am and why it got me into this was I wanted to be a psychologist. I loved what makes people tick and what drives people to do what they do and how they think and ultimately what changes behavior. And so while I started down that path, I realized that most psychologists are a little bit nuts and quickly realized that was not going to be the profession for me, but the idea of it still stood. And so while I was searching and looking for who am I and what do I want to do, the idea of marketing came across my plate and I quickly latched onto it primarily for that same reason. It's understanding what motivates and changes someone's behavior to get them to buy with their credit card, with their purchasing power, with their dollars, whatever that is. And that was really attractive to me. So I've always approached, and what you'll hear as we talk, is everything I talk about has something to do with the psychology behind it. What's the motivating factor that gets somebody to go from one place to the next, and how does sales and marketing help them do that?
Wow, that's incredible. So where after school per se, where did you get started in sales and marketing and learning about the psychology of these things?
Yeah, well, the first couple of roles, especially when you're just starting out and you're just trying to figure out who you are, you don't have the best, most glamorous jobs, right? And so
yeah,
the jobs that I had,
especially in marketing too,
especially marketing, right? You
analyst roles and stuff like that,
You're at the bottom of the pile. And so a lot of the roles that I had were like marketing / customer service. It was kind of like, how much can we get out of this kid? And how much can we try and leverage what we've got as gaps within our services organization? And so on one day I'd be marketing and I'd be creating some content, and the next day I was fielding services calls from folks. And so you try and look at the silver lining at all of those, right? No matter where you are in the organization, you've got some role or some function that you're like, I don't know what this has to do with anything. I don't know why I'm doing this. This isn't my best skill set. No one's got the perfect job. And what I found is even when you're in those situations, try and figure out, okay, what's the benefit that I get out of this? So even though I wouldn't have wanted a service and support role, the benefit was I heard what people were going through after the sale. I heard what they were going through once they were using and hopefully enjoying our products, and where they weren't and why they weren't and what was happening. And so that gave me a better, fuller, richer understanding on how to package, sell, market, and even manipulate the customer when necessary to buy, because I knew what they were experiencing on the back end, and I could take that experience and translate it to the front end. So if you ever have the opportunity and you're forced in a position, or even if you're in a sales role, go visit the service and support team and spend a day with them and listen to what customers are actually saying and experiencing after the fact, because it makes you smarter, richer before the sale.
Ah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, where was it at where you just really started to kind of get your feet wet with sales and marketing, like running your stride? You felt like you started to make it, like, because I mean, I know you led head of social strategy at SAP, but there had to have been some things before that you did that helps you get there, and then the next thing and the next thing. Like, so where did you feel like, was that at Taurus, or just curious?
Yeah, I'd say the Taurus experience was a rich one, and certainly PeopleSoft was a rich one too. But I think it was really PayPal, and PayPal going through this massive growth.
Yeah.
We were expanding around the globe at that point, and so eBay had just come in and acquired a huge infusion of money. We had all of this capital and we had all of this runway, but we had huge expectations. Let's go conquer the world, quite literally. And so we were launching a new country almost on a weekly basis. And so, my job there was to come in and help with this international expansion. How quickly can we go in and win France? And then next week, how quickly can we go in and win Germany?
So did you get to work with Peter Thiel and Reid Hoffman and like Elon Musk, or no?
Oh no, I'd love to say.
I study the PayPal mafia pretty aggressively.
Yeah, I'd love to say I had anything more than a hallway interaction with any of them, and that's just wouldn't be true. So, they were pretty well cloistered from the direct contact with folks like me. So,
Damn.
No, we got to. I know. It's if I had been a few years later in my career, I might have had more interaction with them. But yeah. So what a great crew, what a great culture to bring an organization up in.
Was that like the first, like, was that the first marketing gig, or was it PeopleSoft? PeopleSoft and then eBay?
Probably the first big one.
Wow.
And PeopleSoft, I mean, so there's a little bit of even a different time and a different place, right? The founder of PeopleSoft, Dave Duffield, who now went on to, found Workday, he used to walk around in Hawaiian shirts and hug people in the hallways, right? And it was this very collegial, family-like environment. And then you sort of pivot a couple of years into a place like PayPal, and now all of a sudden it's like, okay, go conquer the world, right? We're on a mission to go do this thing. And then you pivot 5-10 years after the PayPal experience, and the mood, the vibe in these companies is radically different. And so you've seen this sort of pivot swing from, hey, we're one big happy family, to, okay, now let's try and squeeze as much as we can out of people. And that's not bad, but it's just a different model, a different structure that's happened over the past, say, 15 years.
Wow. Yeah. And not to transition, but that's incredible because Workday's blowing up. So it sounds like he was a great leader, and then going from PeopleSoft to PayPal, and eBay, like that acquisition was insane. You've got the world's best entrepreneurs all at one company. I mean, if you really think about it, you got Peter Thiel, you got Reid Hoffman, you've got Elon Musk. I'm sure I'm missing, like, there's a ton of other people too that I'm missing.
Oh, I'm sure there's a few of them that are listening. They're just like, damn it, say my name. I was there, right? And it's funny because there are these little pivot points, these little historical moments where, Oracle in the late 90s generated a group of people that went on to then found Siebel Systems or Salesforce, right? And they were these little micro groups of leaders that all splintered off. And PayPal and eBay was absolutely one of those, where all of these people came in and then they broke off and started doing their own thing. And I think we're going to see a couple more of those as well. And again, this could be an entire other conversation to have on how these certain cultures and corporations create these amazing leaders who have too much entrepreneurial skin in the game that they want to go off and do their own thing. They're not comfortable with staying with the norm in those organizations. So yeah, PayPal was absolutely like that, where you felt like on any given day someone was going to go take off and go solve the next big thing because people were just itching for change. Just pure and simple. They wanted change. They weren't comfortable with the status quo.
Wow. What was the biggest thing you learned, success, failure, micro secrets that you learned at PayPal?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing there was the adaptability, right? Moving so quickly, being able to just roll up your sleeves and not pausing on, and this is a little tricky, it's not pausing on the thing that you were doing, but it's moving to the next thing right away. But then also not negating what you learned from those prior experiences. So what I mean by that is we'd go launch France, and then quite literally the next week we were going to go launch Germany. Huge markets.
Oh my gosh. These are like massive countries. Just
massive countries,
boom, boom, boom.
massive markets. And so it would be easy to just go, okay, I'm going to forget what I did on this one and go roll right into the next one. And you have to emotionally do that. You got to move from one thing to the next. You don't have time to rest on your laurels. But the next piece was you got to make sure that you've got enough where you've learned from your past and you can incorporate that into your future. And I saw a lot of people fail on that. They would just move to the next thing and forget everything they learned from their prior experiences. And you've got to take that and you've got to adapt it and make Germany a little bit better because you learned from some of the failures in France. And then these were all leading up to, okay, eventually we're going to launch China. Now, what does that look like? And all these learnings from different countries around the world help to incorporate and inform that decision.
I love that. Adaptability. Move from one thing to the next, learn as much as possible, but then optimize as you move very fast, adaptably, if that's even a word.
We'll make it a word. And it should be, right? Because again, it's the same thing. The speed of pace is moving so quickly and so much more rapidly that you really don't have that time to sit back and contemplate the things that you have done. You just have to adapt and move. And hopefully some of what you've learned along the way sticks enough that you can go in and do the next thing and be just a little bit smarter for it.
I love that. I love that. So you work with some of the world's best leaders, entrepreneurs, executors in the business. After eBay and PayPal, what made you decide to leave and where'd you head next?
Yeah. So we left because we moved for geographic reasons. I went out to Boston for a couple of years and went to a company called Tourist. And then as much as I loved Boston, the snow was killing me.
The snow's brutal.
And so we moved back to California. So that was a good experiment, and I'm glad I did it. There were some good leading things at Tourist, but that led me to an amazing opportunity at SAP. I got to go to this big enterprise company right at the time that social media, these new organizations, Twitter, Facebook, were just starting to come online. And this company is trying to find its identity, this, age-old German company, and you can't see me, but I'm using air quotes, is trying to become this global enterprise organization. And so cultural shift, there's a market shift, there's a customer buying shift, and then there's this huge 60,000 person company that's trying to figure out its identity like it's a teenager, like it's going through puberty and trying to figure out what it wants to be when it grows up. So talk about a really exciting couple of years to be at a company that's trying to find its way, but it's got billions of dollars of revenue and 60,000 people behind it. That's a hard ship to try and navigate through and to change its course in the water.
Yeah. I mean, how many employees did you have at the time when you were doing social?
Yeah. So when we started the social team, there were 5 people in the organization, 5 out of 60,000 that were doing social.
60,000 employees. 5 of you were doing social management and strategy.
That was it. There was just 5 in the company. And when I left 6 years later, the digital team was 135 and then had individual teams in each country. So call it 300 people total.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
that's incredible. I'm always on. It's funny because now they've got like radio shows, social shows. Like I'm on a bunch of them. They're producing so much like content around social and digital content. It's crazy. What were some of the biggest things that you saw regarding like social selling and social strategy that was effective into maximizing sales, and like what would you recommend to the audience here from that SAP experience?
yeah, I think, one of the things that we did was and this sounds so sophomoric and basic now, but we introduced an editorial calendar where we said, okay, we've got all this content, we've got an amazing amount of content. All these people have contributed. We have PhDs that are writing these 60-page white papers that nobody's reading these things. They're doctoral dissertations on finance or supply chain or whatever. And so we've got to find a way to make that more snackable, and it has to have a point of view. And so we introduced an editorial calendar, which again seems to be the norm today, and most organizations have caught on to that. But then it was a radical idea for us. And so we delivered this editorial calendar, and we also started giving away content for free, which again, radical idea back then. Everything was gated. You wanted to ask name, rank, social security number, your shoe size, your birthday, right? There were like 30 data points that you wanted for every piece of content. And we're like, no, let's give it away and establish goodwill first. And I think that's still one of the things that I see organizations struggle with today is you've got this amazing product. And especially with founders, this comes up into the book, years later. You got this amazing product, and you're passionate, and you're excited, and you're engaged about it, and you want people to have that same level of passion and energy that you have, because you think what you have to sell, you have to offer that customer is more amazing than anything else out there. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there.
Right.
So because of that, you were like, all right, I want you to come on board with this. And you want to have all of their information so you can create that connection. And giving your stuff away for free and hoping the customer will come back to you, right? Will come back to you in waves, and will come back to you from time and time again because you have the most interesting stuff and you're making that connection, you're building that trust. That's hard. That's hard for a lot of organizations. It certainly was hard for SAP back in that period to try and give things away and expect that somebody will come back. Because you want to measure it and hold on to it, and you want to control that relationship, and you have to let go of that relationship to be successful.
Yeah, it's interesting because people think like you can't share the secrets and you can't share all the goods, but it's funny, like based on the data, you see that like less than 2% actually do anything with the content. Like kind of like buying e-courses. I don't like all the data about the e-courses is no one ever finishes them, which is interesting. Like, how did you sell everyone to give away the content for free?
Yeah, so this was one of the tips and tricks of, there's a lot you can do in an organization that size where you do things and don't tell people. And so a lot of what we did was just, okay, we're not going to announce to people that this is what we're doing. We're just going to do it. And we did it and tried it. And when it worked, we were the first ones to sell that as a service within the organization. Hey, nobody told us to do this. We went off and we gave our stuff away, but here's what we got in return. And we saw, I think the numbers were a 5x increase over the prior 6 months in both leads and quality of leads, just by going through that. I'm giving everything away for free, but making sure that people are coming back to the buffet more often. And that model works, and it worked in spades there. And so that was something that later became replicated, became more the norm over the course of years.
That's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I started doing it on LinkedIn and via our social, and I think we 12x'd our lead flow from it. Yeah. Just document everything we do and share it, like our secrets, our tips, our playbooks, just share it all. And our social blew up. I mean, we don't have the scale of 60,000 people, but I would feel like if you posted on social and you could get all 60,000 to just like it, like on LinkedIn or something, it would just totally blow up. Like, was it hard to get everyone around? Like, you guys would probably spend so much time and energy on a post or an update, and like, was it pulling teeth to get anyone to like it or share it?
Oh yeah, it was near impossible. And part of what I did when I was there was do executive coaching to help our leaders understand how to use social, what's the mindset, and even just the tactics of using it. Because you've got to imagine, here's a group of people who've grown up around a certain style. You know, it's like people that going back and being somewhat analog about it, someone who starts on a typewriter and then suddenly moves to a computer. You've got to go through a retraining. You're not comfortable doing that. You want to go back to the typewriter. Same thing here. People were used to doing things a certain way. Now, all of a sudden, you could have digital conversations at scale. People were uncomfortable with that. And so it wasn't just here's a tool to use. You had to walk people through and train them how to do it because it wasn't, again, the psychology, it wasn't in their DNA. They were uncomfortable doing that. So it wasn't just pulling teeth to get them to do it. It was sitting down and training them and making them willing to think about it. And then how do you do that at scale? You know,
Yeah,
try
that's tough.
train 60,000 people one-on-one. That's going to take a little bit of time.
Right. So what'd you do? Just create like a course?
Yeah, we tried a couple of things. We created courses. We tried the more interpersonal stuff. I think at the end, what we did was we just said, look, there's only a few people here that really matter. And if we can get them on board, it gives everybody else permission to want to change. And so we found a couple of the key influencers and we're like, all right, we're going to make you advocates for this. And we're going to get you so excited. And we're going to increase your brand. And so I took it on myself to help those people get keynote speaking opportunities, and I helped them create digital content, and I helped them get their voice out there. And when we were able to say, look what they've been able to do in terms of power and influence, it's that old joke about salespeople. If you want to get sales team motivated, get one of them into a Mercedes, and everybody else will follow. Right? Same thing here.
Oh, that's a good one. That's such a good quote. I never heard that before. That's so good.
Power, right? And so if you can get a couple people more power using that tool and technology, other people will find their way. And it's a great motivator. So you don't have to try and push everybody. They're going to pull to you. You just need a couple of those people to be able to showcase.
That's amazing. It's really strategic that you guys like looked for the key influencers in these different BUs to get them sold because you knew if you sold them, they would sell everyone else.
Yeah. Well, and this is one of the things I think that makes people in organizations successful is it's the desire to be scrappy, right? I think there's something when you've got big teams and you've got large groups of people behind you and you've got resources and momentum, and there's a few teams that I've met and people that I've met that have that. It's not that you're lazy, it's that you can farm things out to other people. When you're in a startup or when you're in a startup mode in a big company, you've got to be scrappy. And that scrappiness forces you to look at it and go, I can't create a course for 60,000 people and do that at scale. I can't manage that on my own. What can I do and what can I be successful with? And so you lock yourself in a closet for a day and you're just like, okay, let me think of the things that I can really pull off. And you come up with, all right, let's make a couple people successful and use that as a lightning rod for everybody else.
Oh,
And
I love it.
Happiness, it worked.
Wow. What was the number one social selling strategy that drove like the most sales leads, revenue, followers, you name it? Like if you had to do one tactic in social.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us, and I'll go back to is we were great at creating 60,000 page or 60 page, 60,000 word like documents, and nobody was reading those. And the best quote that I heard to describe this is it's the Thanksgiving dinner, and I write about this in the book. People call it now evergreen content, but here, take that one big piece and like Thanksgiving, you eat the turkey on Thursday. Friday, you're going and having sandwiches. Saturday, you're making soup. You're doing turkey hash on Sunday, whatever, right? Find a way to use as much of that bird over a period of time. Same thing here with content. Take all that great content and then use it in a variety of different ways. So top 10 tweets from the document, create a one pager, do a 60-second video. We were just sort of multi-channeling all of that content and then distributing it out and finding how much use can we get out of this one thing, instead of just, all right, let's go throw this piece of content out there and put it behind a gate and hope that somebody reads it.
Yeah, I love that. Derivative content.
Yeah.
It sounds like that was a big driver for the success over there.
Oh, it absolutely was. And again, it was a bit of a game changer for the culture and the time. It was not something that they were used to doing. It was actually the other way. It was more about assembling it to as big a thing as possible. And we were like, no, let's strip it down and send it out in waves and hope that people start to get the vibe from this. And again, they did. We would do these 60-second videos in front of a whiteboard with a camera, and we would talk about really complex ideas. So at the time, everybody was talking about toxic assets. That was the financial crisis was happening. Toxic assets were on everybody's name, but nobody knew what that meant. And so we would do how toxic assets are like buying bulk bottles of wine. And we drew bottles of wine, and we talked about how toxic asset is like buying a case of wine. And it was a way to take complex ideas and in a very human way, boil them down so that people could digest them. But it also made us, the marketing team, approachable. So people would come up to us at conferences and go, hey, I saw your video on toxic assets, or hey, you're the wine guys. And again, it made that connection that allowed people to feel like SAP isn't a big German company. SAP to me are these two guys creating these great videos, and I can connect with them on a personal level.
That's awesome. That's incredible. So you learned a lot over the 5 years in Palo Alto, right, at SAP, leading social, and head of social there. What made you decide to leave? It sounds like you got an opportunity at Neustar and at VeriSign. I'm curious to hear, what made you leave, and then, what you were doing at both those companies, and what you learned from those experiences.
Yeah. It's funny because the motivation was, been here for a number of years, big company, but I'm not having enough direct conversation with the customer. As you get into these bigger companies and you grow up in your role, you have less and less direct interaction with the customer. You're dealing with partners or vendors or the finance team, and you're setting up your operational budget, but you're not actually doing what you love to do, why you got into it in the first place, which is the psychology. How do I get you to buy? How do I get you to become my customer? And so I lost that, and I was missing it. And so painful decision, but one that I'm glad I did. I thought, I'll go downstream and go to smaller organizations where I can deal with customers at scale. The interesting thing was, 2 jobs later, it led me to become an entrepreneur and work directly with customers, which if I could go back, right, I would say just jump to that model. Don't do the step in between of going to companies. But I didn't know that at the time. And so live, learn, and adapt. But I went to these 2 great organizations of Neustar and VeriSign, 1,000 to 5,000 employees.
Yeah, and still big companies. This isn't like a small startup either.
No, I mean, VeriSign sells .com around the globe, right? And Neustar ran caller ID as the back end infrastructure for the United States. Like, both massive companies, but not
highly well known,
but not as big as the others. And I thought, okay, well, if I take this interim step, I still have teams and resources, and I can make change at scale, but I'm going to be a little bit closer to the customer. And I was a little bit closer, but still not enough. So I don't want to get too far ahead of us, but that was the motivator to go in and make that shift.
Yeah. And was there anything big that you took away? So outside of, I should have jumped to entrepreneurialism faster, in regards to sales and marketing secrets, like, was there any other big takeaways that you had from those 2? And then I want to dive into your top sales secret, but what did you learn over those 2-year span? Like, kind of like biggest success, failure, takeaway, leveling you up to the entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah, I think so. I can certainly talk about the success here in a second, but I want to talk about the failures because I think the failure was the better learning at those companies. And I'll be a little bit careful, and I want to put the caveat because I still highly respect and had great experiences at both companies, and I never want to denigrate a brand, but what I did find at both of those, unfortunately, was what I found in other organizations and eventually led me to go do the book and the entrepreneurial thing is this conflict between sales and marketing. And it has to do with attribution and it has to do with the battle that most leaders put sales and marketing into, which is who ultimately was the one that drove the revenue. And because you put ownership on one or the other, it's a zero sum game. Somebody has to win that. Sales and marketing then end up fighting over who brought in the customer, who really made the change, who's driving revenue, and who should get the budget, right? And so you hear this all the time.
Yeah.
Well, we were the one that drove them to the event. Yeah, but I was the one that met them at the event. Yeah, but I followed up with a great piece of content. Yes, but I was the one that met them in a room and sold them. Yes, but I was the one that delivered the final webinar that got them to sign on the dotted line. And so is that sales or is that marketing? Well, you know what? Guess what, guys, teams, people, like stop fighting. It's both of you. And coming up with this realization that sales and marketing need to be closer aligned and work together instead of being pitted against each other was the big learning from both of those organizations.
Yeah, that's tough to do. So like, did you guys were you able to crack that code there? Or was it tough?
No, it was too tough. It was too ingrained. Both companies had cultures that wouldn't allow it. And it was a little of Hatfields and McCoys. Like, even if you could solve it for the new people coming in, there was still a lot of, remember that deal you burned me on 18 months ago? Well, I'm getting back at you, And so that we never quite got past that at either organization. And what it allowed me to do was, as I built the consulting practice and started working with founders and working with the book, I made it a mission to crack that code, and going into startups was actually able to do that, fix those problems of letting sales and marketing work together, and had some highly successful next steps, primarily because of learning from those failures.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that and that experience led you to launching your own kind of consultancy, right? As a fractional CMO.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you wrote Beyond Product, right?
Right.
Where you go into, this is I've got some notes up of the book, but roadmap for dreamers, big idea people, founders, entrepreneurs, and trailblazers to transport their ideas from concept to successful business. So you leave corporate, the 1,000 employee, 60,000 employee thing. You launch the CMO consulting. What made you walk us through from day one of doing that to where you're at today, and then why'd you write the book? And tell us about the book, because you interviewed a lot of game changers for the book, kind of like what I'm doing with this book. Just excited to learn more about this whole experience.
Yeah. It really came from a place of everything we had just talked about, wanting to get closer to the customer and a better understanding of what makes the customer buy. That was the thing that got me into marketing in the first place, and growing into these bigger companies, getting farther and farther away from that. And so as I was making the transition to go to that, I saw those things we just talked about, right? Disconnect between the sales and marketing organization, not enough time actually talking to the customer, engaging with the customer. And so that led to, I'm going to go into the startup world and start working with founders that have this passion and this idea and this energy, and let's go help them find a way to connect. And in doing so, saw that the things that I had learned from my prior years were assets available to a founder. And some founders wanted to listen and others didn't. And I thought, well, there's a way to do this at scale. How can I help get these ideas across to them? And so the idea of the book came about. And in the process of doing that, spent 9 months of interviewing about 70 founders, VCs, entrepreneurs, marketers, partners, angels, anybody that supports the startup ecosystem, and then ask them questions for an hour, kind of like we're doing right here. What'd you learn? Why'd you do it? How'd you get into this? What are your tips and tricks? And started to see that in particular for founders, entrepreneurs, they have this great idea. They've got this energy, this passion that is the best for this one thing that they do. But what they lack is the limits of humanity, right? We can't be good at everything. A founder has to be good at all swim lanes. A marketer can come in and say, I'm a good marketer, and be in their marketing swim lane. A finance person could be in the finance swim lane. A founder has to be everything for everybody in every swim lane. And not everybody has that skill set. So we looked at it and said, what can we do to help round out the founder's skill set, help them be better in their swim lanes? And so we looked at it and how do we take things to market? How do we package it up? How do we sell it? How do we direct things to customers? And those conversations went into the book. We walked them through 5 different stages, from I've got a great idea at a coffee shop to I now have built this company and it's time for me to exit and go do something else. And all of them, by the way, none of them said, oh, I'm going to go and retire on an island. All of them were like, okay, I'm going to do something else. Here's my next idea. I think once they do it once, they're like, I'm hooked and I want to do it again. It's like the best drug.
Oh, wow. What were some of the notable kind of entrepreneurs, VCs, game changers that you interviewed?
Yeah. So we interviewed John Miller, who founded Marketo and is now founding Engagio.
Yep.
We interviewed Andy Cunningham, who was Steve Jobs' PR person when he got kicked out of Apple and went to Next. And she stayed with him through the transition, was his head of PR and communications at Next, and then transitioned him back to Apple, and then went off and wrote a book and did her own thing. We interviewed a couple of founders.
What'd she say about that experience? That's insane, by the way.
Talk about, so Andy is just a warm, delightful person, whip smart, but just a great person to sit down and ask that question, because she's been asked it for, 20-some years now. Like, what was it like? And she will retell that with the same energy and passion I think she told it at the beginning, which is, he wanted not so much revenge, but he wanted to go out and blow things up. And so he had that same passion and energy of like, here's what I'm going to do. I did with Apple. I want to go do it with Next. And so right from the get-go, it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go lick my wounds and go do this new thing. It was, all right, we're doing this new thing. And it was all hands on deck, all brains on deck. And they went and tackled the market. And it was because of that effort and energy that he was also considered back to be brought back for Apple again. So she was like, from day one, there was no, oh, let's talk about it. It was, no, we're doing this. Let's go.
Damn, just all hands on deck.
All hands on deck, right? And going from one thing to the next. And even at times, her having to slow him down and say, I get what you want to do, but let's dial this back a little bit. There's a better way to do it. Let's wait a couple of days. So when we get this and this engaged. But he was just like, okay, I'm ready to go. Like this thing isn't going to be my legacy. So I got to keep working forward on what that's going to be. And, I think that was, if you read about him or follow him at all, that was always the hallmark of who he was is, okay, what's the next thing? What are we going to do next?
Wow. Yeah. And go ahead, keep going. I know you were running through a list of other people that were highly notable that you were interviewing, but that's crazy.
Yeah. And, we also, the thing that was interesting too is, we interviewed a bunch of VCs and investors, and we talked to the money people. And then the thing that was fascinating is I interviewed a bunch of people whose names you had never heard of and may never, ever hear of. They were 3-time founders, and the first 2 times failed, and the third time is actually working for them. Or they were in the entertainment industry and decided to go into technology, or they, built a company and the company got sold and now they're on their next thing. These people that had this energy and effort that didn't want to become household names, but wanted to be expert at what they did and wanted to make the best experience for their customer ever. And so we talked to those people. We talked to 2 women who were redefining foster care in the United States. and they got a grant for $200,000, and they're going to redefine what this looks like, and it's going to be ancestry.com for foster care, and then they're going to give the technology away to the states. So we heard these amazing stories that you may never know who those two women are, but we had these amazing stories that we got to tell that helped other founders learn how to be better founders.
That's incredible. Well, with the book, with the experience in sales and marketing, Todd, that leads us up to the biggest question, my man. Sales secrets from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. If you had to go back in time to when you first started in sales and marketing, out of everything that you learned from interviewing some of the top entrepreneurs, VCs, investors, to leading marketing and social at some of the largest companies in the world, SAP, Neustar, VeriSign, you name it, PeopleSoft, what is your top sales secret to maximize your sales success if you could do it all over again?
Yeah. So, the really interesting thing is this actually has to do with organizational leadership and attribution, and I'll explain what that means. So this goes back a little bit to what I was saying before, where organizations struggle with this he versus she, us versus them, Hatfields and McCoys, sales versus marketing role that they create. And that does more damage to the forward momentum of an organization than anything else, because you can put the right resources and time and energy behind it. But if those two teams are fighting and you're not aligned, sharing resources, sharing content, and finding the best way to connect and interact with that customer, all you're doing is spending 20, 30, 40% of your time infighting versus actually doing the thing you're supposed to do. And those organizations will never be successful, and it starts at the top. So biggest tip, trick, idea is for the sales and marketing leadership of the organization to align themselves at the very beginning to create a pact, right? So we're going back to sort of survivor mode, right? Let's go ahead and create an alliance between sales and marketing, and everything that they do, how they align themselves, how they think about themselves, how they measure themselves, and how they communicate that measurement up to leadership has to be both for the benefit of sales and marketing. So don't make it about attribution. Don't make it about pipeline. Don't make it about moving customers through pipeline. It has to be things that sales and marketing can agree on and align on, because they're one organization with two leaders ultimately trying to drive revenue and bring the customer on board. And organizations that can make that mental shift and make that alliance are successful. The ones that can't are ultimately doomed for failure. And this is why CMOs have 18-month tenures. This is why you're shifting through chief revenue officers every 24 months, is because those two teams can't align, and ultimately the organization's doomed.
Wow. One org, two leaders, you have to align. And when you say don't make it about attribution, so let's just use Seamless.AI, right? My software company, we deliver the world's best sales leads. I've got my marketing leader and my VP of sales. So like, would they align to not fight over attribution? And I want everyone to get aligned on hitting our number. Like, would you have them focus on, driving leads, driving the revenue number, but not focused on where it comes from? Like, I feel like the audience, wouldn't know where to start or how to like make that happen. Like, yeah. How do you now worry about it? Like, do you all focus on one KPI and you both just go all in on that? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. So, and this is good, because I think getting into the brass tacks is where this is useful, because most people will go, okay, great. I'd love to create a relationship with my sales and marketing leader where they're actually aligned on things. Okay, great. Let's scratch down. How do you do that? So I'm not saying don't look at attribution. It's important to know that if I went to an event and I spent a ton of money at a field event or a conference, that I'm actually getting something out of that. Yeah. You want to see that there's attribution from that event for people being brought in to drive revenue. It's don't share that information with the leadership, and don't make that the thing that you point back to and say, that's the thing that drove revenue. Because no one goes to a show, meets you one time, and buys. That's not how it works. They've had 7 or 8 other things that happened behind the scenes that ultimately drove them. So know it, understand it, but also be aware that that's not the one thing that you should hang your hat on. So where I saw companies be successful with this is you make it about one thing that you're both signed up for. So it can be managing certain KPIs in pipeline. It can be managing revenue. It can be managing bookings, but it's one thing that you're all signed up for. So at first, if you're figuring this out, take it down to, we're doing this to bookings. What are our monthly or quarterly bookings? However you're managing those. Sales and marketing are signed up to own that piece. Great. You're both on the hook for it. Now, internally, behind closed doors, you can look at attribution. You can look at who did what, who brought the deal in. But ultimately, what you're showing externally is that one thing. And you're getting your teams aligned to, hey, everyone's on the hook for revenue. Let's find a way to make this work. And no one gets bonused, no one gets paid unless we make revenue, because that's ultimately what matters for the organization.
I love that. So, utilize the data, of course, attribute everything to what's driving the deals forward, but get everyone aligned on the same KPI, the same goal, same mission, and then do whatever it takes to hit that mission.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, sounds simple, like kind of a duh moment, like, well, aren't we doing this already? No, you're not. Because most organizations have this internal friction between the two teams that aren't allowing them to align to that. And again, the companies that do are super successful.
And let's just use this. Like, I'm going to take it one step further because I'd be curious. This is tough to do. So let's just say my quota is $100 million. And to do the $100 million, I know I need 1,000 leads a month. Sales could yell at marketing, hey, you need to launch the paid search, the SEO, the content campaigns to bring in the 1,000 leads. Marketing can yell, hey, you've got the outbound SDRs. Go prospect and book all the appointments and bring the 1,000 in. Like, how do you effectively work together to say, okay, we're going to own this quota together to hit our bookings number? If it's 1,000 leads, did $100 million, like, do you just divide it? Do you know what I mean? Because this is like literally, if tomorrow you were marketing and I was sales, I know we got to do 1,000 leads to hit 100 million. How would you and I agree or figure out how to do that?
Yeah. So it really becomes as simple as you and I sitting down and saying, here's the problem we're trying to tackle. And it's, what was the number again? 100 million?
Yeah, 100 million. And then let's just say we knew the funnel math where it would be 1,000 sales qualified leads.
Yeah. So our dilemma is 100 million, 1,000 sales qualified leads. What most organizations do is get caught up in the trap of, well, if your SDRs would do this, yes, but if your SEO would do this, screw that. Let's sit down. You and I discuss our goal. The only thing that matters is 1,000 leads, 100 million. Okay, great. What are all the things that are working for us at present? And what are things that we haven't considered yet? Where do we want to try and experiment? Because I'm a big fan of experimenting. You always got to try and find where the edges are, right?
You said that earlier too, and you're talking about experimenting, moving to Boston. I caught that. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's let's try stuff, right? And one of the things I heard, just as a quick segue, one of the things I heard from one of the founders was, we make Friday afternoons our experiment time. Like, typically people aren't doing as much work on a Friday afternoon. So Friday afternoons are experiment time. Go figure stuff out, try things, run a new campaign, create a new piece of content, try a new tool, learn a new tool. But Friday afternoons are your time to experiment and sort of touch the edges. So our goal is to sit down, 100 million, 1,000 leads, great. What's working, what's not working? And let's have an honest...
Kind of like audit, basically audit what we're currently doing.
Absolutely. And that's your time to come into me and say, look, you're not providing on SEO, and here's what I'm getting as feedback. Okay, great. What can I do to change and own that? And how much of that is accurate? And then it's my time to come to you and say, hey, why aren't your SDRs actually doing more outbound calls? And you can give me that feedback and say, well, they don't have the right content. They don't have the right scripting. But let's sit down and have that. Here's what's working and not working. But if our goal is to solve this thing and not to fight amongst each other, the problem is this thing in front of us. And even that objectivity helps us to solve and tackle the problem versus Hatfields and McCoy, sales versus marketing. And then from there, we're able to sit down and look at it and say, look, marketing may want to do great, fun branding stuff. We may want to do a great new website. We may want to do the face and voice of the company. But you know what? Right now, we need to help the sales organization sell. And so let's get scrappy. Let's create content. Let's write scripts for you. Let's listen to a couple of sales calls and hear how things are actually being delivered. Let's give you a new pitch deck. If you need 6 pitch decks, let's do that for you. Whatever it takes to get it done. And then from there, once we get revenue and we hire more people and things start working, then we can start thinking about the other loftier goals. But it helps us focus on this one problem, and everything starts right there.
I love that. That's really good. I love the let's audit. And then you kind of force this like mind mapping. I think of mind mapping, just getting into writing now. Mind mapping is where like you take a theme, let's just say it's 1,000 leads, and you just start drawing all the different ways that you could get to 1,000 leads, generate a lead. Okay, well, we could generate a lead from cold emailing, from Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, cold calling. Like that's the mind map. And then you just keep, it sounds like you just keep like figuring out of all the options, what are the best, and then how are we performing at these different channels, and then what could be dramatically improved. But also you kind of gave a secret there, like radical ownership or like radical transparency. You got to be transparent with the CMO and the chief revenue officer, but then they have to own that feedback and like take responsibility for it. I feel like a lot of these companies, like, did you see that? Where they'd be like, no, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. Like no responsibility on like, okay, I hear you, Todd. Let me step up and try to fix that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, look, if you're a united front going into the leadership, I've been in these meetings. Nobody wants to be sitting around the C-suite table at the monthly or weekly meeting and have each of you pointing at each other and saying, the reason why we're not doing X is because of them. And that's a very uncomfortable place. And so you'll do anything to make sure that you can point the finger at the other person instead of having the finger pointed at you. And so people then become defensive and they change their tactics and they aren't honest and transparent about what's happening. So when you sit down and have that united front, our goal in sales and marketing is to do this. Then you can come up with a plan, and now you're providing that plan together. And that alignment, even at that first step, right? That's the source of a river, right? That's the source of the Mississippi.
Yeah,
if you
I
don't
like
get
that
that fixed, right, everything that happens after is too hard to change. And so you start right there. I'll share this as a quick anecdote. Went into a company, started this process. We were doing a lot of events, a lot of field events, and sat down with the chief revenue officer. And we both were like, okay, so we're going to do these next 6 events over the next 6 months. And he was like, I don't know that we get a lot out of that. And I kind of said, well, I'm hearing feedback from the team that I don't know that we get a lot of it either. Let's go look at the data. And we were wasting huge amounts of money going to events for no reason. And what we realized was it was a leader that was there 2 years prior that was big on events, and everyone was just following blindly that leadership of somebody that hadn't been there for 24 months. And it wasn't until we sat down and really had this conversation and audited and we looked at the data and we looked at the direct feedback from people that were on the ground doing it that we said, events aren't our best strategy. Let's put our resources into this and experiment a little, but let's also try these other things. And we found the right path forward and grew revenue 3x over the next 6 months because we were able to sort of unburden ourselves from this thing that we were doing for no real good reason. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to find that in every organization, but you're going to find big pockets, and I've found it every single time, of having this kind of transparent, honest, radical relationship with your co-leader.
Wow. I love it. The organizational leadership has to align sales and marketing and concern less about attribution. The teams cannot be fighting. They have to align on engaging and helping the customers. And that's got to be at the focal point, the central system of the operating system for everyone. Don't make it about attribution. Make it about serving the customer and whatever it takes to do that. That's incredible, man. Where can, Todd, just because we have to wrap up, where can the audience, learn from you, subscribe from you, follow you for more sales secrets, tips, best practices?
Well, what a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. So if you want to learn more, you can certainly purchase the book, Beyond Product. It is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and an ebook format. It will be released in bookstores near you on May 7th. Again, that's Beyond Product. Ask for it by name. You can also follow me and the 70 interviews that I did for the book on foundersplace.co. That's foundersplace.co, the place where exceptional founders grow. Podcasts, blogs, insights, speaking events, opportunities, and even some of the work that I'm doing to consult and do fractional CMO work at organizations are all there at Founders Place. We'd love to have you come on, subscribe, and listen to a few of these podcasts. They're amazing. And that's the easiest way to find me.
That's awesome. Yeah, go pick up the book Beyond Product with Todd by Todd Wilms and Jill Konrath. It's right on there. If you want to become an exceptional leader, an exceptional founder, salesperson, 70 plus different 50 business leaders all share their tips, tricks, perspectives, and Todd got like the secret sauce from all of them, kind of like what we're doing with our book. And go pick up the book and go follow them and connect at Founders. What was that again? Just for the audience.
Foundersplace.co.
Foundersplace.co. And thank you, everyone. First, thank you, Todd, for sharing your story and everything that you've learned with your experience. I mean, it's incredible. And I learned a lot. Like, I'm already trying to think of how to align marketing and sales internally, and hope the audience got a lot out of that, as well as all the other places that you've worked at. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. This was super fun.
Awesome. And thank you, audience, for joining us to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. You can pick up a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com. That's secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com, and tune into the podcast or watch on YouTube and all that other jazz that marketing tells me to throw out there. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. We release new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube to never miss an episode.